Hello and welcome to the International News Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Dunicic. Now, as I always do, before we begin, I want to remind you to subscribe to our channel to stay in the loop on the most important international and global affairs that are occurring today. Now, our main story today takes us to Haiti, and more specifically, we're going to focus on the kidnapping of 17 missionaries east of Port-au-Prince. Now, we're going to focus on the kidnapping itself. One, fundamentally because it's an interesting story, and two, because a lot of human lives hang in the balance. And finally, we're going to use this kidnapping as kind of a reflection of the socioeconomic and criminal situation and issues that are occurring in Haiti today. We're going to look at this from an individual perspective and end on a more national level and see exactly what's going on in Haiti and what are kind of the issues that the country is facing. So let's begin on the individual story, the kidnapping itself. 17 individuals have been kidnapped. Every single person that has been kidnapped comes from the missionary group, Christian Aid Ministries. Now, Christian Aid Ministries is a non-governmental organization that provides foreign aid to international and global communities that are in need, more poor countries or impoverished areas. Now, they do this, one, to help these communities, but also two, and their primary goal is to spread their faith or to spread Christianity. Now, these 17 individuals that were kidnapped while they were taking a trip to visit an in-need orphanage in the the Croix de Bouquet region east of Port-au-Prince. Now, the story becomes a little bit sadder and even a bit more darker when looking at the demographic composition of the group that was kidnapped. It includes 7 women, 5 men, and 5 children, the youngest of which is 2 years old. One of the individuals that is kidnapped is 2 years old. Now, I genuinely do hope that every single member of the Christian Aid Ministries is returned safely and not a single hair on their head is harmed. But I do want to point something out. Recently, Christian Aid Ministries, who has historically operated in Haiti for quite a long time, just recently took a 9-month pause from the country of Haiti, stating political and social unrest, making the safety of their missionaries to be unpredictable. They recently came back in and started doing missionary work once again in Haiti. But I do want to question who had the bright idea of bringing a 2-year-old along into what is the Western Hemisphere's poorest country, a nation that faces a significant level of crime and is generally speaking politically unstable. Especially during this time, Haiti has never been a stable and safe place, and that is unfortunate. The Haitian people are some of the greatest and cultured people there are, but their country fundamentally faces a lot of problems. But this year has been even more difficult than Haiti. On July 7th, the Haitian president, Jovenel Moise, was shot and fatally murdered, assassinated. Less than 1 month later, Haiti was hit with a 7.2 magnitude earthquake, which killed 2,200 people, displaced countless more, and caused billions of dollars in infrastructural damage, causing even more social unrest. Whoever had the idea of bringing a child into this environment, quite simply, was not thinking straight. Now, I don't want to put the blame on Christian Aid Ministries. They were in Haiti with the goal of helping the local population and the goal of spreading their religious belief, which is the right of every single person, whether you agree with their religion or not. The real people who are at fault here are the gang that committed the kidnapping. The gang is known as 400 Mavozo and controls the Croix de Bouquet region where the missionaries were traveling to that underprivileged orphanage. Now, 400 Mavozo is a gang that is notorious for committing killings, kidnappings, and extortions. They're led by an individual known as Wilson Joseph, who goes by the nickname Langwo Sanjo, which in the local Creole language means death never knows when it's coming, which is an ominous nickname and I guess an attempt to be badass, if you will. Now, 400 Mavozo and its leader Wilson Joseph are notorious for committing kidnappings. Earlier just this year, 400 Mavozo, under the leadership of Joseph, kidnapped 5 priests, 2 nuns, and 3 relatives of one of the priests. Now, it should be noted on a positive note, every single one of these priests, the relatives that were kidnapped, and the nuns were released completely unharmed. So that probably gives a good amount of hope for the current missionaries that have been kidnapped. Now, it should be noted that the missionaries that were kidnapped, 16 of them are United States citizens and 1 is a Canadian citizen, which has brought the international community to be involved in this scenario. The United States State Department is working closely with local authorities and encouraging interagency cooperation to get these people back safely and unharmed. But it's interesting. This kidnapping occurred only days after a visit by high-ranking U.S. diplomatic officials. And the purpose of their meeting was meeting with Haitian government officials to discuss gang violence in the country. Now, concretely, the U.S. officials offered a $15 million grant to the Haitian National Police to help fight gang violence. Gang violence has become horrible in Haiti. It's become so bad that it's displaced, meaning removed thousands of people from their homes. That's how bad the gang violence has become. And these people who have been displaced and removed from their homes, that's bad enough. But it's even worse when you consider the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic and these people are currently living in temporary housing, which is fundamentally unhygienic and overcrowded. And finally, it's not just gang violence that has increased. Kidnappings, like the ones that have occurred on these missionaries, are becoming ever more and more popular. Why kidnappings? The reason why is because Haiti is an exceptionally impoverished nation. Now, typically gangs in other countries tend to deal in things such as drug dealing, extortion, the selling of illegal goods, etc. But the reality is many people in Haiti don't have the money for drugs. They don't have the ability to be extorted. Robbing someone is not as profitable. The one thing that everyone is going to do is pay to get a loved one back. So kidnapping is always profitable, though it is always going to be a crime of desperation. And Haitian criminals are getting more desperate. They are not just kidnapping people from high social classes, which is what the situation was before. Now, gangs are targeting people from all of the social classes, people from the lower class, the middle class, and the higher class. Historically, victims of kidnapping tended to be school children coming from wealthier families, doctors, lawyers who have financial means and money, or police officers who have a large union that was always willing to pay to get their police officers back. Nowadays, these gangs are kidnapping pretty much anyone that they can because they're also desperate and strapped for cash, just like the rest of Haitians are. Now, this has actually created a significant amount of economic problems in Haiti, with people simply avoiding territory that's controlled by gangs, or in many cases, staying home. A lot of Haitians have quit their jobs or refused to go to work because they're afraid of being kidnapped. Normal, everyday people are afraid of being kidnapped. And interestingly enough, unions, trade unions, and workers' rights groups have been organizing a strike and a protest to demand more action from the Haitian government and the national police to end these kidnappings, which have become almost endemic in Haiti. Just for reference, the problem is so bad that the United Nations decided to actually do research on the kidnapping pandemic or epidemic that is occurring in Haiti. In the first 8 months of this year, 328 kidnappings have been reported. To compare that, in all of last year, in all 12 months in 2020, only 234 kidnappings occurred. Now, the number 348 might not seem like a lot, but consider that this is only the amount of reported kidnappings. Keep in mind, many kidnappings don't go reported. Families simply pay the desired ransom, get their family members back, and they never talk to the police. That happens in many cases. In addition to this, the number becomes even bigger when you recognize that Haiti is not a small country by any means, but it's not a large one. The population of Haiti is around 11.4 million. Having this many kidnappings occur is too fucking much. And the people of Haiti generally feel unsafe. This has caused economic issues with people not wanting to go to work. It's caused fear, and general gang violence has displaced thousands of people, which is even more problematic in a country that just faced a massive earthquake that caused it even more issues, displaced even more people, and a nation whose president was assassinated this year. Basically, Haiti has a lot of issues to contend with. I want to end this story by saying that I genuinely hope that all of these missionaries that were kidnapped and these victims, all 17 of them, are returned safely, one way or another. I hope that the 400 Mavozo gang, especially its leader Wilson Joseph, are brought to justice and have their day in court for the crimes that they have been committing and the terror that they have been inflicting upon the Haitian people and the foreign community inside Haiti. And I do hope that the Haitian government is able to organize itself properly and address the issues that have been ruining the lives of Haitians on a daily basis. A lot of countries fundamentally are not great places to live. And this is not saying anything bad about the country or the country's people. Some nations just simply have problems. Haiti has a lot more problems than other nations, and it's been faced with hardship after hardship after hardship after hardship. It's just a country that can't seem to get a break. I hope you have a chance to comment. Let me know what you think. What do you think could make life better for the Haitian people, make life safer, make just the whole situation in Haiti a little bit more stable? Let me know what you think. Let's have an open and fair discussion, and let's pray or hope or whatever religious belief you have, or let's just hope that the kidnapped missionaries are able to return home safely. Thanks for tuning in to the IND podcast, and I'll see you next time.